Hi guys, in case you didn't watch my previous video about the 5 different food groups, my name is Candace and I'm a Girl Scout working on my Gold Award, which is the highest award that you can earn in Girl Scouts. So for my Gold Award project, I am teaching elementary school students about how to live a healthy lifestyle, and that includes things like healthy eating, physical health, and keeping a healthy mind. So for today's lesson slash video, I'm going to be continuing with the healthy eating, and I'm going to be talking about how to read and understand food labels or food information. So I have an example of a food or example of a food label. And of course, because I am a Girl Scout, I have a box of Girl Scout Thin Mints. So this is what a food label or nutrition facts, as you can see at the top, what nutrition facts looks like. If you want to take a look, just to kind of get familiar with what it looks like. And we'll be going through all of the different things that you might find on a food label. Okay, so now that you're kind of familiar with that, I'm going to be going through the food label and just showing you and telling you and explaining what each part of the food label means. So kind of to help you visualize again, I just have, this is just for random food, a big food label, so you can easily see. So as you can see on the top, it starts off with saying serving size and servings per container. So what the serving size means is the amount of food that is recommended that you eat in one sitting. So for example, for these Girl Scout cookies, the serving size, as you can see in the bold right there, is 4 cookies. So that means that at one time when you're eating these cookies, it's recommended that you eat about 4 cookies. So you don't want to really be eating more than the recommended 4 cookies. And on here, when it says about 8 servings per container, that pretty much means exactly what it sounds like. It means that there are 8 servings in here, and because each serving is 4 cookies, 8 times 4 is 32. So there's about 32 Thin Mint cookies in this box. But serving size isn't always definite. It might not always be 1 cookie or 2 crackers, because what if you have something like peanut butter or something like soup or something like that? Then sometimes what they will use is measurements that you might find on measuring cups or like teaspoons or tablespoons. For example, on this big one right here, as you can see, the serving size is 2/3 cup. So just to kind of help you visualize, maybe you've seen your parents cooking with measuring cups. Maybe you like to cook with measuring cups. So for example, we have a 1/4 cup, 1/3 cup, 1/2 cup, and 1 cup. So for example, for this page, nutrition fact that I just showed you, 2/3 cup. So the serving size for this food, whatever this food might be, is going to be, I have 1/3 cup here, like that. So it's going to be about 2 of these. And in this particular example, there happens to be 8 servings per container. And again, that can vary for whichever food that you are eating. So kind of moving down, the next thing that we see is calories. So a calorie is basically just a measurement of the amount of energy that the food gives to you. So the higher calories that the food has, the more energy that you're going to be getting from it. And kind of for reference, the average calorie count that the average human should be eating in a day is about 2,000 calories. So again, you can see in this example, this particular food has 230 calories for every serving, which again is 2/3 cups. Now going down, the next thing on the food label that we see is total fat. So fat, you've probably heard about fat before. Maybe for a second, just try to think about different foods that might contain a lot of fat. So maybe you thought about something like ice cream or chocolate, or cake or cookies or something like that. So a lot of junk food has a lot of fat. So what fat essentially is like long-term energy storage. And fat, generally you don't want to be eating too much fat, because if you eat too much fat, it's hard to lose, so it could cause you to gain weight, and it's not really the healthiest option for you. Okay, so the next thing on the food label that we have is cholesterol. And cholesterol is basically just a type of fat, which can be found in foods such as butter, meat, and eggs, specifically the egg yolk. Now I have a little diagram to kind of show you what fat or cholesterol could do for your body if you eat too much of it. So this right here is a little diagram. If let's say the little red beads are like the blood moving through your body, and these little tubes are the things that the blood is moving throughout your body. So as you can see, this one is clear, nothing is blocking the way, and this one has a lot of things blocking the blood from moving through. So these yellow things are simulating the fat buildup that could happen in your body if you eat too much food with fat in it. So if I were to turn this upside down, you can kind of see how it's a lot easier for the blood on this side to move through to the top, whereas this side, it's getting caught within the yellow on the outside, or the fat. So again, I'll do it one more time. See, this is all the way up. All of them have reached the top, but a lot of these bees are still making their way up, and some of them, so you can see like over here, some of them even got stuck. And again, all of these made it up, and some of these are still stuck. So again, that's kind of just like a visual representation of what can happen in your body if you eat too much, eat a lot of food with a lot of fat in it. So the next thing that I'm going to talk about is sodium. So sodium could be pretty much described as salt. So for example, something that's really salty, some things like potato chips have a lot of salt on them, or French fries. Soy sauce has a lot of salt in it, so it has a lot of sodium in it. So again, another word that you could use for sodium is simply salt. And again, this is something that your body needs some of it, but it's not something that you want to be eating too much of. So next, going down, we have carbohydrates. Carbohydrates. And what carbohydrates are your body's main source of energy. And if you remember from the last video when I talked about the 5 different food groups, 3 of the food groups from there fall into the category of carbohydrates. So the three food groups that are carbohydrates are fruits, vegetables, and grains. So the carbohydrates include fruits, vegetables, and grains. So if you can kind of remember some different foods from those food groups, for example, different fruits like bananas, apples, oranges, vegetables, carrots, broccoli, lettuce, and grains such as bread or noodles or crackers, things like that are all going to be carbohydrates. And again, carbohydrates are your body's main source of energy. So maybe, let's say for lunch, maybe you had a bowl of mac and cheese, and all the noodles from the mac and cheese fall into the grains food group, which again is a carbohydrate. So maybe after you had that bowl of mac and cheese, you feel really energized, and that's because you ate a lot of carbohydrates, so your body just gained a lot of energy, leaving you feel maybe a little excited, hyper, with a lot of energy, and maybe wanting to run around and burn off some of the energy now. Now the next thing that I'm going to talk about is sugar. So as you can see, sugar is actually a type of carbohydrate, meaning, again, it gives you a lot of energy. But sugar is not really something, again, it's not something that we want to really be eating too much of. It's kind of like fat, where we need some for our bodies to function, but it's not something we want to overdo. And I'm sure why don't you just take a second, think of some foods that you think have a lot of sugar in them. So when you bite into it, it's all nice, sweet, it's delicious. What are some foods that you think might have a lot of sugar in it? So maybe you said things like candy, cake, ice cream, chocolate. Again, those are all kind of unhealthy foods because not only do a lot of them have fat, but they also have a lot of sugar, which is not something we want to overdo. And generally for elementary school kids, the recommended amount of sugar that you should be eating in a day, it should not be more than about 25 grams. Now, the next one that I'm going to talk about is protein. And you might remember from the last video that protein is actually a food group. And maybe you remember some of the foods that fall into that food group, including things like chicken or fish, beef, or maybe the kind of unusual ones that we talked about too, like nuts, beans, or tofu. So those all have a lot of protein. Now, on the bottom here, we see some vitamins here. So vitamins are basically just something for your body that's you can eat, get from food, and it just helps keep your body healthy. So the three that I'm going to talk about is vitamin A, vitamin C, and vitamin D. So vitamin A is a vitamin that's really important for your eyes. It keeps your eyes nice and strong and nice and healthy. And maybe you've heard people say that things like carrots are really good for your eyes. And the reason for that is because carrots are one example of a food that contains a lot of vitamin A. Now the next one, vitamin C. Vitamin C is really good for making sure you don't get sick. So it's really good for your immune system. And some examples of foods with a lot of vitamin C are things like oranges, lemons, grapefruit. A lot of the citruses have a lot of vitamin C in it. And again, that's not to say that other foods don't contain vitamin C. It's just that citruses tend to contain very large amounts of it. Now the last one is vitamin D, and vitamin D is really important for keeping your bones nice and strong and nice and healthy. And you can actually get vitamin D just straight from the sunlight. So if you go outside, maybe you're just playing with your friends or playing your sport outside, you're probably getting a lot of vitamin D directly just from the sunlight. Okay, so now that we kind of covered, again, just if you want to take one last look at it, now that we kind of covered most of the main things on the nutrition label, I have a couple of some pictures of foods, like food pairs, and I'm going to show them to you and ask things like which one has more protein or which one has more carbohydrates. And when I show the two up and ask the question, just think about it in your head, and then I'll say the answer after, and hopefully your answer matches mine. So first we have hot dog buns and the hot dog meat. Now, which one of these two do you think has more protein? So hopefully you said the hot dog meat has more protein. Now, which one has more carbohydrates? Hopefully you said the hot dog buns have more carbohydrates, because if you remember, bread belongs in the grains category. And if you remember, grains are one of the 3 food groups that are considered to be carbohydrates. And again, carbohydrates are your body's main source of energy. So the next two that I have, we have ice cream and tomatoes. Which one do you think has more fat? Hopefully you said the ice cream has more fat. Fruits generally don't have a lot of fat. Now this kind of brings me, these two foods kind of brings me to one more point that I wanted to make. And that's about the difference between natural sugar and added sugar. Because when I say added sugar, we're talking about foods such as candy or cake, where the sugar doesn't occur naturally. It's very sweet, but it doesn't occur naturally. Whereas natural sugar is present in a lot of fruits, like apples or watermelon, things like that. You eat it and it's still very sweet, but that doesn't mean that we've added sugar. It just means that it's naturally occurring within the fruit as it grows. So fruits have added sugar, fruits have natural sugar, and other foods such as candy or ice cream have things like added sugar. So now, holding these two up again, which one do you think has natural sugar? Hopefully you said the tomatoes, because like I said, a lot of fruits have natural sugar within them. Then which one has added sugar? Yep, the ice cream is the one that has the added sugar. Now we have soy sauce and syrup. Which one do you think has more sodium? And again, you could think of sodium as having a lot of salt. And yes, the soy sauce has more sodium than the maple syrup. Now, which one has more sugar? Yep, the syrup has more sugar than the soy sauce. And now the last one that I have, we have some beef and some mashed potatoes. Which one do you think has more carbohydrates? And that is going to be the potatoes, which again, carbohydrates are your body's main source of energy. Then which one has more protein? Yep, the beef has more protein. Now this might be a bit of a tricky one, but which one do you think has more cholesterol? And again, cholesterol is a type of fat. So hopefully you said the beef, because maybe you remember how I mentioned how cholesterol can be found in foods such as beef, butter, and eggs, just to name a couple. Okay, so I think that is pretty much it for this lesson. So again, just to recap, we talked about the different things you would find on a nutrition label. So things like serving size, calories, fat, sodium, cholesterol, carbohydrates, sugar, protein, and different vitamins. And just to kind of wrap things up, I want to talk about how it's really important that you eat foods that contain a little bit of all of these different types, different things from the food label. It's important to eat foods with a little bit of fat, protein, sugar, sodium. Your body needs a little bit of everything. You just don't want to eat too much of certain things, such as the fat, or the sugar, or the sodium. So just like the last lesson, I have a handout that kind of goes over everything that we talked about, and also another little fun activity, and this time it's a crossword puzzle to do with all the things that you might find on a nutrition label. So again, I hope you learned something new. I hope this was informative. And the next video, I'm going to be wrapping up the healthy eating, and we're going to be talking about different fast foods and maybe some healthier alternatives to those favorite fast food places. So thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.